Hello, good afternoon. Hello.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes. Sorry for joining you late. I was actually in a departmental meeting, and I thought the meeting would be over by 3 o'clock, and that was why I agreed that we should have our makeup class between 3 and 4. It's a very short class. Today we are concluding the part that I'm taking, which is the introductory part. And I had shared on the screen the topic that we'll be treating. So largely we'll be discussing data and types of data. Last week, we have looked at basic definitions that we will be coming across in the course. We looked at what statistics is all about, what business statistics is, what is data, what is population, what is a variable, what do we mean by parameter, what do we mean by sample, sampling, and some other terms. So today we will conclude by looking at the classification of data. We'll look at classification of data according to source. We'll look at classification of data according to nature. So based on what I've shared on the screen, our data can be primary or secondary if you are looking at the sources of data.
Sorry, there's only one
Data,
board I can see. I think she just shared, right?
I shared a slide with you, and I also shared my screen earlier. So let me check if there's any. Let me try and reshare again. So that's, but it's on page 18 of the document I shared last week. Page 18 of the document, the PDF document that I shared. Not the textbook, but the slide that I shared is on page 18 that we are looking at. So let me see if I can try and reshare in case some of us are not having access to it. So just give me like 2 minutes to sort out any technical issue. All right. So, can we see the screen?
Yes, sir, I can see.
All right, thank you. So we are looking at classification of data. I had to mute everyone because of the background noise. So we are looking at data in two different forms. So
Me too.
so we'll look at data according to how you have sourced them, and data according to its form. Data according to how you have sourced them can be primary or secondary. When the data has to be collected from a third party, data collected from a repository, data collected from a CD, from library, or any other storage material, that data is referred to as secondary. So when you look at data according to how you have sourced the data, data can be primary or secondary. However, if you are looking at data according to its form, according to its nature, data can be quantitative, it can be qualitative. Even when they are qualitative or quantitative, data can be numeric or non-numeric. When data is numeric, they can be continuous, they can be discrete. And when they are non-numeric, they can be nominal or ordinal. So that's the summary of what we'll be discussing today. So I will take it from so primary data. So primary data, they are data that are collected by the researcher. Data collected for the purpose for whom they are used for. Data collected directly from the field through direct observation, through experimentation, or conduct of sample survey. So if you design the process that generates that data, whatever you get at the end of the day will be primary. You can conduct an experiment where some variables are manipulated and then you observe outcome. Whatever you come up with is primary because you put in place a process that generates that data. You could also stay somewhere and be taking observations. You might be recording the number of vehicles that are flying through a particular road. Maybe there's a transportation survey, or maybe government is planning to expand a particular road and they want an idea of the volume of vehicle that is flying through that road. You can do direct observation. Or you have a sample of individual from a population and you have decided to collect information from them by administering questionnaires or by conducting direct interview. So whatever you get from them will be primary. So you can see from the definition that a major advantage of primary data is that you are sure of the source of information. You can guarantee that the information is from a reliable source. That's a major advantage. But of course, primary data also has disadvantages. And a major disadvantage of primary data is that it takes time to collect. It takes time to collect, and it can be financially expensive too, because we need to put some apparatus in place in case you are conducting an experiment, or you need to employ field researcher in case you need to do direct observation or even sample survey. So when you're looking at cost and you're looking at the time, primary data might not be attractive. But if you are looking for the assurance, you are looking at the reliability of the source of the information, then primary data can be attractive. So what have I said about the types of data? I said you can look at your data according to how you have sourced it. You can also look at data according to its nature. Now we have started to look at data according to how we have sourced it. Data can be primary, data can be secondary. And we have defined what our primary data is. We said primary data are data that are collected directly by the researcher, data that are generated for the purpose for whom they are meant. Data collected through direct observation, data collected through experimentation, data collected through the conduct of sample survey. They are raw data, they are not summarized, they have not been manipulated in any way. What you generate is raw, they are referred to as primary. Now let's look at secondary data. Secondary data. So on the other hand, data can be collected from data collection agencies. You can decide to go to bodies that are set up for collecting certain data. CBN, for instance, they are set up to collect economic related data. You can get macro economic data from them, microeconomic data from them, all data that has to do with banking, you get it from the CBN. Financial data, you get it from CBN. So data collected from data collection agencies data collected from libraries, data collected from any storage material, they are all referred to as secondary data. Those data have been collected by a third party. The data have been summarized. The data have been manipulated and stored. You have just gone into their repository to collect the data. That data is not a primary data. That data is secondary. Secondary because you did not generate the data. Unlike primary data that you generated, you set up the process that generates the data. That data is primary. But for secondary, you did not generate it. You did not initiate it. You have only gone into the repository of the data collection agency of the third party that have collected the data, and you have sourced it. So that is secondary data. Once again, data when sourced can be primary or it can be secondary. Primary if you generate the data by yourself, if you put in the process that generates the data. But for secondary, if you have to go into records to collect the data, if you have to go into library, journal, or any other storage material from where you can source the data, whatever you get will be secondary. Now, what are the major advantages and disadvantages of secondary data? You see, the fact that someone else have collected the data and stored. So if we look at the time that it will take for you to get the data, that time is shortened as compared to primary data. So it takes less time when compared to primary. So it's very, very quick in collecting primary, secondary data. And secondary data too can be cheap, especially if the data is publicly available. You can imagine if you need any information about the interest rate, about the cost, the prices of bond from the CBN. All you need to do is to go to their site, download it, and then you have the information. But if you want to set up the process to generate that data, you can see that it will cost you more. So in terms of the cost, primary, secondary data can be cheaper, right? And then it takes less time for you to get the data. Although a major disadvantage of secondary data is that the reliability of that data might not be 100% assured. Data have been summarized, so you have lost some details in the data. So they have given you the weekly average for maybe for a particular price of bond. What happened to the details? The daily prices are not given. So what if you need the daily prices? So all those details are lost in the process of trying to summarize and then making the data presentable or presenting it in different forms and so on. So some details might have been lost in that process. So that's a major disadvantage of secondary data. Well, you have to take the decision ultimately. The decision lies on the user of the data. You weigh the advantages and disadvantages, and then you take your decision. And then sometimes getting the data real time might be preferable to taking data that is stale. So if you need the real-time data, then that means it has to be primary. But if you don't mind looking at retrospective events, looking at past records, historical events, then secondary data is preferable. So what the data will be used for will determine how to source the data. But what is important at this level is that we should know that our data can be primary or secondary if we are looking at how you have sourced the data. Okay, so now let us move to the nature of the data. Now that we have sourced the data, what form can our data be? Our data can be quantitative and it can be qualitative. Quantitative, that means they are figures, numerical values. right? And when they are qualitative, sometimes the data appears to be figures, but they do not necessarily represent figures. They might represent position. You have assigned 1 to male, 2 to female. The 1 and 2 are not necessarily values that measure some distances or that quantifies. They are just labels. So the fact that you have them as numbers do not necessarily make them to be quantitative. But whatever figure you see, that figure can be categorized as either being numeric or non-numeric. When they are numeric, they can be continuous or discrete. Continuous means what you have represents a measurement. You have used some metrics to arrive at that figure. You have used some formulas to arrive at that figure. There is a scale that is used to arrive at that figure. Those figures that you use formula to compute, using a scale to generate, they are continuous data. Interest rate is being computed, is being measured, is continuous. Your weight is a result of measurement, is continuous. The time that you measure at any given time, the time that you check either using your wristwatch or using your phone, they are measurement, they are continuous. However, number of cars that on a particular road at any given time, number of students in a classroom, number of hospitals in a location, they are discrete. They represent count. They represent count. So I can have 2. Number 2. And those 2 could mean different things. I can have 2, and that 2 can be as a result of counting. And I can have the same 2, and it's also as a result of measurement. So you need to understand how that 2 is being generated before you can classify the 2 as either continuous or discrete. So when you look at a figure, you need information behind that figure before you can classify it. Otherwise, you might be misleading either yourself or you're misleading the user of the figure. So when you see any figure, you need information behind that figure. How is it collected? What does it represent? So if the figure is as a result of measurement, then what you have is continuous. On the other hand, if the figure is as a result of counting, then what you have is discrete. Discrete. But they are all numeric. But just that further details will suggest either the data is continuous or discrete. Now, there are some figures that when you look at, they actually represent some positioning label. So I can decide to have 5 students and I put them on 5 different scales. Student number 1 has CGPA of 5.00. So I'll say that student number 1 is on scale 1. Student number 2 have GPA of maybe 4.50. So I can say that candidate or the student is on scale number 2, and so on. So what I have will represent an arrangement, ordered arrangement. So when you have ordered arrangement, then that data that you see is actually ordinal. So ordinal data, they are arranged in a particular order. So you can have first position, second position, third position, and so on. So when you have arranged either in ascending or descending order, those figures that you eventually get, they are not representing count. They are not representing measurement. Although they are figure, but actually representing position. They are ordinal. All right? Well, there are times that your numbering doesn't represent position. Neither are they measurement nor counting. They can just simply be classification. I have assigned 1 to male, 2 to female. It doesn't mean that male will come before female, or female will come before male. It's just a matter of convenience that I have used 1 to denote male, 2 to denote female. In that case, my numbering there represents classification, categorization. 1 Abia, 2 maybe Imo, and then maybe 37 represent Abuja. So the ones that I've assigned, 1 representing, 2 represent a particular state, and so on, they are not even ordered. It doesn't mean that I've arranged them in a particular order, either descending or ascending. I'm only using those numbering to represent classification. So you can see the way we can use numbers, in different ways. You can use number to represent measurement. That means there's a scale that is being used to generate those numbers. I can count and then arrive at numbers. Discrete. In the first scenario, discontinuous. And I can also have number representing order, arranging in order. That's ordinal. Ordinal. And I can also have numbering that represents categorization, classification, male, female. I can have state 1, state 2, state 3, and so on. Doesn't mean that state 1 will come before state 2 or state 3. It's just a matter of labeling them. So you can use all this information depending on what they actually represent and how you have generated them. So again, we have said that data that we have defined last week can be primary or secondary if you are looking at how you have collected the data. And data can also be qualitative or quantitative, depending on its nature. What form is the data taking? So we need to be sure of what our data represent at any given time so that we can appropriately label our data. So let's go through as a summary what we did last week and this week. Remember last week I told us that the recommended text for this course is Statistics for Business and Economics. Grace, I will come to you in a minute. Let me just do a recap, and then you'll be able to ask your question. So let's do this recap. So we have said that the recommended text for this course is Statistics for Business and Economics by Anderson, Sweeney, and William. And luckily, I have made this available, the e-copy available for you guys. So I hope you all have it by now. You can also go online and purchase if you can. That's left to you. So what is the learning objective? As far as this first course, this first lecture is concerned, to define what statistics is and also discuss different ways and different means by which statistics is being applicable. Then I'm to define some basic terms, especially those that we'll be making use of as this course proceeds. Differentiate between descriptive and inferential statistics, and also classify numbers accordingly. So I have defined statistics. I told us that statistics here is a discipline, it's a field of study. It is a discipline that deals with how data is collected, how they are organized, how they are presented, and how they are interpreted for decision making. And I've told us that statistics has a wide range of application. And some basic terms have been introduced. We discussed data, we discussed population, sample, parameter, statistics, estimate, estimator, sampling frame, and so much more. And I've also advised us that you should go through the materials, the textbook given to you, that more terms are there for us to play around with. So we have looked at how data can be collected. We have said that our data can be primary, our data can be secondary, if we are looking at how we have sourced the data. We have also said that our data can be quantitative, can be qualitative, depending on the nature, and advised us that for every figure that you see, it is better you get the story behind it so that you classify the data correctly. Now, the statistics that you have, when you collect all the information, you might either be interested in just describing the data that you have using some summary measure, using graphs, using tables, or you might be interested in using the information that you have to test either hypothesis, to test the truthfulness of some claims, to make forecasts, to do correlation analysis and some other complex computations. If your interest is just on describing the data, presenting the data on tables, and using charts to show the trend in the data, what you are simply doing is descriptive. Descriptive, we are describing descriptive statistics. So if you are using statistical tools to describe the data, using summary measure, using graphs, using tables, that is descriptive statistics. But however, if you are interested in computing probabilities, doing some time series analysis, doing some regression analysis, testing some hypotheses about about some values about some assumptions, what you are simply doing is inferential statistics. Inferential statistics. The way we have divided our FBA courses is that FBA 220 is descriptive statistics, while FBA 310, the one you will be taking the first semester 300 level, is inferential statistics. So which means as far as this course is concerned, we shall be making use of graphs more, tables, and then summarizing our data with measures of dispersion, measures of location, and so on. That is the introductory part. This is what I'm asked to teach you. So Grace, you can ask your question. Grace, your hand was up.
Okay, good afternoon, sir.
Yes, afternoon.
Sir, my question is, when you were talking about ordinary, you said ordinary it involves arranging in order. What about the classification and assigning? Is that nominal?
Yes, when you are dealing with classification and categorization, that is nominal. When you are classifying, when your numbering actually represents classification, that is nominal. When your numbering represents an arrangement, that is ordinal. Oliver, your hand is up.
Okay, I'm coming, sir.
Yes, please ask your question.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So thank you, sir. You said secondary data and data that are being processed and summarized, right?
Yes.
So can I say, is it also known as information? Because when I did some research about data information, the differences, I was told that data are facts, raw values, while information are processed data. So can we say that secondary data is also known as information?
We define data as pieces of information that are analyzed for decision making. So data becomes information after you have analyzed it.
Hey.
I hope it's clear.
Answer the second question.
Secondary data, they represent information. Yeah, that's the summary. They are information because they are data that have been processed.
Sir, the second question is, you said data can be qualitative and quantitative. How do we know that some data are qualitative? You mentioned that some data can be numeric and they are qualitative. How do we know data which are qualitative in nature?
Okay. I said that it is always good that you get the story behind every figure that you see. You understand that the fact that you have one doesn't necessarily mean one. That one is the measurement, so you need some story behind it. You need to know whether that one represents label. If it is label, then that is qualitative. But if that one represents count or represent measurement, wow, that data is quantitative. So you need to get some story behind the data before you can classify appropriately. There are some qualitative data that are numeric and discrete. And you also have some quantitative data that are numeric and discrete. But you just need to know what the figure that you are looking at, what they represent. You can't just classify because you can see two, and then you assume that two is qualitative. What if that two is representing female? You'll be misclassifying the data. So that's why I said you need to get the story before you can definitely classify it and use it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
So, ladies and gentlemen, my job is just to introduce the course to you, and that I have done. Other lecturers will take it up from there. But meanwhile, at any given time, if you need anything from me, you can always chat me up. I have made available all materials, and I also gave you some videos. Look at it. I want you to take the advice of my lecturer. My lecturer will tell you. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Sir, which video are you talking about?
Yes,
in summary, pay attention to details. I have given you some questions and answers that you should have a look at them. Did you see the other videos, question and answer?
No, sir.
Sir, we don't know the video you're talking about. We don't know the video you're talking about. We did not see any video, sir.
Some of you
didn't see any video.
Okay, how did you get the textbook? Did you get the textbook?
It is our class.
Sir, they are holding material, sir.
Why would they be holding material? I sent all of these. I sent, and they'll be useful for you because your exam, your test will be
they will give
multiple choice, and some of those questions will just surface. I'm not saying, so I want you to have a look at them. So if they are still holding the information, maybe you guys should see me either later today or tomorrow. You will come, and then I will make sure that you have it. And then in my presence, you will share it on your general platform, just to ensure that everybody has it.
Okay, sir. I'm coming to your office.
All right. So I'll see you guys later.
Thank you, sir. We love you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. We love you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
sir.
Mike, how are you doing now? I don't come up with quite a machine like this. Now they talk. Who they say my rest? May I see your face? Turn on your camera.
Come on, go off now.
Turn on your camera, man, see your face.
Oliver, you not gonna let her rest.
Now they talk, man, see your face.